Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and in today's video I thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about the fame system in the Prince Valiant storytelling game. And what the fame system is that's how you judge how your character's progression, and that's how you earn advancements to skills and abilities, um, and other such things for your character. Other games call it experience. The Prince Valiant system calls it fame. Why is this interesting, and why does this make a difference? Well, part of it is that the system deliberately calls it fame because it is intrinsically linked to your character's actual level of fame in the world. Fame not only talks about after earning so much fame, you gain an advancement to a skill, but you're also after gaining so much fame, then that actually gives you benefits with social encounters because you are a more famous person. Things become easier for you. One of the maybe you earned that skill because you became so famous that now a famous teacher was willing to teach you how to do this thing that you wanted to do instead of leaving you in the lurch. So again, to kind of go over this with the notes, I'm going to be using the notes provided in the Alexandrian the cheat sheets for the Prince Valiant storytelling game. That's from the Alexandrian website. Okay. There's a lot more information in the book itself, and that what it does is it provides you with a lot more explanations and examples. But we're just going to go over, because I don't want this video to be an hour long. We're just going to go over what the cheat sheet has to say. Okay. All right. So Fame Awards. You start off with having a kind of a participation award. So every character, every player that interacts in a session of the Prince Valiant storytelling game automatically just gains 100 fame for their character. You came, you played, you get 100 fame. There can be a group advancement or a group achievement, which is based on the base award. Let's say that the whole group achieved something kind of cool, then the whole group can get another maybe 100 fame. Okay? Our traits also affect the fame that you can gain. If a trait that your character has, positive or negative, had a dramatic effect on a session, then you can petition the storyteller to let you have that trait's fame value in addition to your base fame. Okay? Obsessions, which are kind of like traits doubled, give you double the fame. And then an exceptional trait use, something that went above and beyond the call of duty as far as role-playing your trait, or something that completely dominated a session and was absolutely 100% appropriate and left everyone kind of floored, well, that can get an additional award called a gold star, which I will talk about in a future video, or a storytelling certificate, which will also be mentioned in more detail in a future video. But fame is the standard award for most of these things. Okay? So success awards. These are awards that you gain for succeeding, your character succeeding in their actions. For example, a dramatic successful action. Dramatic successful actions give you an additional 100 fame. So if your character was part of, say, a very dramatic battle, not just a battle, but a very dramatic battle, a very cool scene, then that could be an additional 100 fame. Or how about if they received wide recognition for their achievements. If someone else who had, say, 10,000 plus fame, or more, was looked at that character and recognized them by name and started telling other people, "Oh, I think this person did this, and they helped me, and or I saw their courage and I recommend them for this advancement," that would give an additional plus 100 fame to that person that is mentioned because they have been recognized by greatness. All right. Rewards or promotions. These are variable, determined by the storyteller, but an example is earning your knighthood is an automatic plus 300 fame. So someone who was a squire, who did an impressive deed and earned their spurs, in the session where they earn their spurs and they get a award, they get appointed, or sorry, they get anointed as a knight, they get an automatic plus 300 to their fame. If the characters partake in a mass battle event, whether as leaders or as soldiers fighting in it, then they get more fame. Now, if you just observed the battle, you're probably not going to get this fame. But if you were an active participant, then this is where this comes in. So that's 100 fame for surviving at least one round of this mass combat. If your side won the battle, you gain an additional 100 fame. And if your individual character was a commander in this battle, then you gain an additional plus 100 fame per round that they were the commander. So let's say they didn't start out as the commander, but then the leader actually got defeated midway through the combat, and the character stepped up and assumed a leadership position for the last 2 rounds of the combat. Well, that's an additional plus 200 fame for that character who assumed that leadership position, assuming that they were successful. Well, even if they didn't win, they wouldn't get the plus 100 fame for winning, but they still get the plus 100 fame per round for their leadership position in that battle, winning or losing. That's actually really cool, and it brings in the opportunity for some cool story elements where maybe your character was the rebel leader or the leader in rebellion in the last bit of this battle. They were defeated, but their name has still become famous as this leader. And of course, in a very comic book, Prince Valiant style story, the leaders are very rarely going to be just outright killed. In a lot of leaders, you're going to have that once the battle's over, the leaders get to negotiate, and maybe the loser will be taken prisoner, or maybe they will be ransomed, maybe they will be simply exiled and told never to come back again because, we already kicked your butt once. And that kind of, it also feels a lot similar to how a lot of comic books deal with villains, where the villain comes in with their minions, the minions get their butts kicked, the villain gets their butt kicked, and then they go off to Arkham Asylum or whatever, and they disappear for a while until they escape and they return again to do it all over again. Well, you could have the same thing with recurring villains. Like, say you have a Viking warlord who is raiding the coast of Britain, and so your knights, when they're squires, they face off against this guy when he's just a guy with a couple of other Vikings following him, and they defeat him, and he gets, once he's trounced, he runs off vowing revenge, and then a couple of sessions later, after they've become fully fledged knights, they end up meeting this Viking again as he's leading he's like the captain of a whole longship full of Vikings, and they have to face off against him and his more skilled Vikings after these Vikings are raiding an entire town. And, again, you defeat the Vikings at some point, maybe losing some of your own friends along the way, but you defeat this foe, and then they're captured for a while, but then your characters go on a different adventure, and during the course of that adventure, they find out that their enemy that was in prison somehow escaped, and now they're maybe they made their way back to Scandia, and now then the characters become lords and barons and leaders, and then this Viking returns again, this time leading a fleet of longships. And now, so then they've got this recurring villain back again, and so now they have this big old battle, and this might be like the final battle, where either the Viking is, fully, maybe their Viking is fully defeated, and this Viking warlord is finally imprisoned, thrown in the dungeons of Camelot, never to see the light of day again, or the Viking is defeated and admits their defeat and vows, upon holy relics to never return. Or maybe you have the kind of game where you're okay with killing your villains every once in a while, and this is finally when this Viking has that big dramatic moment. They have that big fight against one of the player characters or all of them, and they finally take this person down, and then the characters get to decide if they want to actually end them. Or not, and that can be a really dramatic thing, and that's where some of these storytelling awards can come into play. But it's also where it can be kind of fun to have those recurring villains. And I think I totally sidetracked myself. Sorry about that. Okay. Witnesses. Fame requires witnesses or the telling of tales to take effect. So that's an important aspect of the fame system here. Your characters, if they go on an adventure and they defeat a bunch of monsters and they gather a whole bunch of treasure and they go to town and they don't talk about it, they have nothing when it comes to fame. If they collect a treasure and they don't spend it and they don't talk about what they're doing, they gain no fame. But if they have an adventure and then they come back to town and maybe like the person that they that sent them on this adventure meets them in the tavern and talks up their tale, and then they also they brag, they get a little braggadocious and talk about, oh, we defeated the Goblin King, or we defeated the Viking Lord and all of his minions, and look at this sword that I captured from the Viking Lord, or this axe, this big old axe. This is the Viking axe, and haha, now it's hung on my castle wall, and I am so great. Look at the wonderful knight that I am, and that is how you get your fame. It's kind of weird, at least to me, because I was taught, when I was growing up, I was taught very much that you don't brag about your achievements. You don't talk about the good things that you do. You leave that for other people to do if they recognize what you've done. But you need to be humble when it comes to your own achievements. And so the Prince Valiant system does not reward humility. It rewards being that kind of audacious knight who basically says, you know what? No, I went out there and I defeated 40 of the enemy. Well, I defeated 50. Well, I defeated, 40 of the enemy, and they were on horseback. Like all these sorts of things. And you tell those tall tales, and you can maybe your characters will hire a bard or a storyteller to travel with them to tell the tale of their adventures. And then they can sit back in the tavern and listen to the storyteller, which could be one of the other player characters, or it could be an NPC, tell the tale of their adventures. Well, now, not only are they gaining the benefits of the fame, but they've also got a cool NPC or, fellow player that they need to protect. Because if you don't protect your bard, you're not going to get your fame. If you let the bard die, no one's going to tell your story. It's a neat idea. It's a neat piece that I really enjoy, that kind of separates out the idea of gaining fame from advancing a little bit. It doesn't separate it. Sorry. It dives into the peculiarities of having fame as your advancement. and really kind of doubles down on it. And I like that. I think it encourages a very different style of play than if you just fought monsters and get experience. Because when you just fight monsters to get experience points and treasure or gold for XP encourages exploration and sneakiness in order to just get in, get the treasure, and get out. Gold from killing monsters or having encounters, that emphasizes getting in, killing the monster, and getting out, or getting in and then maybe avoiding the monster or completing the encounters. And when you're not having an encounter, you're not doing anything. So therefore, that's useless time. Shopping is useless time because nothing happens during shopping, and you're not getting anything from it. Well, that's why in my games I turn shopping into actual encounters. You're having an encounter with a shopkeeper, and it can go really well, or it can go really badly, depending on how you role play it. And that's one thing that I handle that. But the Prince Valiant system, it handles it differently, and it says no. You don't get experience points for killing monsters and taking their stuff. You get experience points from having your story told, from doing something that was worth having a story told about, and then having someone witness it, and then telling the world all about how awesome you are. And I think that's very different and very cool. All right, so let's look to the next part. Oh yeah, unreliable witnesses. They also have a thing about unreliable witnesses. Having an unreliable witness to your story, someone who is, for example, if the only one who saw you fight off the pack of ravenous wolves is the boy who cried wolf in the village way too many times, you're probably not going to get as much fame as if it was like the village mayor who saw you fight off that pack of wolves. So the storyteller can take that into context, and so then it becomes important who is the witnesses to your adventure, and who do you talk to in order to promote your stuff. So you could have that flamboyant bard with the great voice, but they are an unreliable narrator because they start embellishing things too much. They're like, well, and of course there was a dragon. And you're going, wait, there wasn't a dragon. And everyone else is going, dragons aren't real. Like, no, there was a dragon here, and they did this thing, and then they did that. And like, oh yeah, that sounds like BS now. I don't believe you now. Look at these guys. Your fame goes down because of that. Because the witness is now considered unreliable, and people think that now they're starting to wonder if you're really a joke, or if you really did the things that you said that you did. So that's kind of an interesting play on how this can work too. So storytellers can use that to help kind of encourage certain ways of playing, and but also help guiding people towards these are the people that I want you to interact with, and these are the people that could be fun to interact with, but maybe they're not really going to be that helpful. And it can also just allow players to just have a little bit more fun in the game, and have the game feel a little bit more immersive, because now the people that it makes a difference who is spreading their story, in addition to just not just having the story spread, but who is spreading their story. And then they start seeking out the non-player characters that are going to be more reputable. They're more likely to want to seek the patronage of, say, the good nobles in the area who everyone likes, because those people will be more likely to provide them with good recommendations, or a good recommendation. Okay, so let's move on. Guidelines. The median session award is 200 fame. That's 100 fame for participation and 100 fame for successfully doing things. So if your heroes are getting about 200 fame, plus or minus a little bit here and there, then you're doing it right. Let's enjoy a little very special apple juice. Lips were getting dry. So that is something that's kind of cool. Bare minimum, you will get 1 fame. If you really like, you showed up, sorry, the bare minimum award is 1 fame. So you could get like, 101 fame for if you showed up and did nothing. That's 101 fame. Although honestly, if a player literally does nothing, let's say a player's actually disruptive at the table, they're playing games on their phone with the volume on, they're doing their side conversations or taking over during scenes when you're actually trying to have a little dramatic, and they're not listening when you're like, hey, can you please not do that at the table? I would start lowering their thing so that maybe they only got 1 fame that episode, yeah, and then they can take the hint, I would hope, at that point. Maximum, people shouldn't really be earning more than 500 fame per episode. And that, for example, this could be the episode where your character becomes a knight. That's 300 fame. And then you've got 100 fame for showing up and 100 fame from awesome rewards, from other rewards aside from just gaining knighthood. So that's, please don't, it doesn't recommend that you give more than 500 points of fame per session. Okay. All fame rewards are variable. Keep that in mind when you're running your games, and also when you're playing. And 100 median per category as listed above. Okay, so yeah, every different category probably is going to get you around 100 fame median, except for like the traits. The traits actually have specific amounts listed depending on what level the trait is and how much of an effect it should have on the story. So you can keep that in mind. All right, fame effects. What can you do with your fame? Well, the most important, or the most common use of fame is every 1,000 points of fame that you get +1 to one of your skills. So if you are, let's say that you're maxing out your fame every game session, you've got your 100 fame for showing up, you've got your 100 fame for having a very successful session where everyone completed their goals. You've got another, let's say you've got some powerful traits that kind of add up to another 100 points right there. And maybe you're doing a few extra things and the storyteller is very generous and you're making like 400 to 500 fame per episode, then you're gaining a new skill every 2 or 3 game sessions. And that's not too bad. I mean, compare that to some D&D sessions where you could go like 4 to 5 sessions without having a character level up if you're in mid-range or higher. That's not so bad. I think that works. I think I like this because, again, there's not a lot to a Prince Valiant storytelling game character, so that +1 is basically like leveling up. Now you do not, because this is skill, you don't increase your brawn or your presence. Those stay consistent after your character is created. It's just skills that you get to increase, so keep that in mind. Okay. Self-training. It's an interesting optional rule. You can do it once per session. It is a presence roll, difficulty 2. Success means that you gain 100 fame for teaching yourself how to do something. That's like, the farm boy who is seen by the neighbors spending, 1 or 2 hours every day practicing with a stick, practicing sword forms with a stick or maybe spear forms or whatnot while they're training to be a member of the militia. Well, they then gain a reputation as being the guy who's training themselves, who's practicing, and maybe they're they're not quite there yet. They haven't quite gained their first pip in, or their first point in arms, but they're working on it. And so the locals notice and the locals talk about it. And that's where that fame can come in. 100 fame per session if you succeed in this check. Okay, I can kind of dig that. So even if you, so that's another, let's say you're doing everything else right, but you're not getting all, you don't have a trait that comes in every episode, but you still have the ability. If this check succeeds, you're looking at 300 fame per session. Not too bad. Not too bad. All right. Miscellaneous effects. First, you should mention to the storyteller when you feel that your character's fame would have an effect on what's going on in the story. And let them decide, and their word is final. If they say no, this doesn't have an effect, then you gotta kind of roll with that. We need to trust our storytellers, okay? They know what they're doing, and you can, you can bring up your thoughts, but don't argue with your storyteller beyond that, please. That also goes with DMing. Please don't argue with your DMs. They're already handling a lot. Don't make them handle your own problems as well. Unless they're being complete jerks about something, don't argue with the DM. Even if they are being a jerk, still don't argue with the DM. Just walk away. All right. Anyway, the miscellaneous effects. So plus 1,000 fame, 1,000 fame higher than another character of equal social class to you gives your character kind of a precedence over that character. So I believe one of the things we talked about is in the modifiers is that gives them a +1 to, because your character a +1 to their tosses for influencing other people. So that's just a little bonus you can get. 10,000 fame. Crowds will gather to see the character. So if your character has earned more than 10,000 fame, they're famous. And if they ride into a town, people will turn and look. And it'll be like if your favorite band just came into town and everyone's like, oh, I can't wait to see them perform. And they're all like, craning their necks, looking at them. That's kind of how that works. And then if you got lots of fame, like more than 10,000, you might be like the Beatles coming to town, and oh my God, people are noticing. All right. Other potential effects could be cowardly brigands and robber knights will just flee from your character. You may not even ever know that they were there. If your character is riding across the countryside with their retinue and their banners flying and people are like, oh, that's the heraldry of Sir what's his name, who was famous for this, that, and the other thing. We won't mess with them. We are going to leave them alone because we don't want to die. And that's kind of a cool thing. Or we don't want to be taken prisoner by them. But you can have the other side of that too. With that much fame, they will also get people willing to challenge them. Because how do you get famous? Well, for example, like gunfighters, the story goes that gunfighters would, young gunfighters would want to be famous by outgunning older but more famous gunfighters. And so you would have the same thing happening with your characters. You get a young man fresh into his knighthood that wants to gain fame by toppling your more famous character in the joust. And so they're just like, yeah, we're going to joust. We're going to joust. I'm going to kick your butt. And they're doing all this trash talk to your character. And then you can joust with them. And maybe you'll knock them off their horse, or maybe they'll knock you off your horse, in which case they get a lot of bonuses. But that can be another result of having high fame, is having more people pay more attention to your character, but not always in a positive way. All right, moving on. So the other examples that they give is for things like wooing damsels. And I would also say that this pertains to if you're playing a female character who is attempting to woo the young men of the court, the young courtiers. Fathers of young people prefer suitors with 5,000 or more fame. So if you have less than 5,000 fame, you're probably not going to get a positive response if you're like, I'm going to romance this noble woman and or this rich merchant's daughter. I'm going to romance this person. And you get a lot of parents will be like, we don't know who you are. Why? No, you're nobody. You're nothing special. We don't want you around our child, and go take a hike. But then once you've got that past that magical threshold of 5,000 plus fame, now you're somebody. You're recognized by society, and then they might be more willing to at least tolerate your presence. All right. They will shower honors and favors on suitors with 10,000 or more fame. So if your character has managed to become truly fabulously famous and wealthy, then people are going to be falling all over themselves to try to set up friendships or romantic connections or whatever social climbing that they want to do with your character. And that's kind of another interesting use of fame. If you want to run that sort of dynastic game where you are looking to create a setting where you're going to then play your character's children. That in and of itself is not directly addressed in the Prince Valiant storytelling game per se, but the Prince Valiant comic showcases the multiple generations of Prince Valiant's family. And we see those characters like his son Arn grow up and become warriors themselves and then start their own families, and we follow their adventures. So I think that's a very neat thing. And this is kind of a suggestion on how you can manage that without necessarily baking it into the rules in a hard and fast way, the way that, say, the Pendragon role-playing system does. That's not a knock on Pendragon. I want to make that clear. I like Pendragon, but it's just saying this is how the Prince Valiant system handles it without necessarily putting up a neon sign and saying this is what we're doing. All right. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is concealing your fame. Let's say you're in a position where you don't want people to know how good you are. Maybe your character is a famous tournament goer, and they're so famous that people are, they're afraid that they're not actually getting a good challenge in tournaments, or they're like, well, I'm the Black Prince, and no one's going to want to fight me in a tournament because they don't want to hurt me because I am royalty, or I am the king, or like my character has basically become King Arthur's right-hand man, so who would I'm worried that people wouldn't strike me in a tournament. They'd be afraid to incur mine or his wrath. And so they might disguise themselves. They might want to hide their fame, take up false heraldry for whatever reason, or hide their infamy if they're really infamous, and therefore take up false heraldry in order to kind of get come up as a Sir Desticado or Destacado, and be an unknown. Then it's a presence roll. You have to make a presence roll to do that. And the difficulty is dependent upon just how famous your character is. They don't give exact hard and fast numbers from what I've seen. I'll double check, and if that's if I find some actual real numbers for that, I'll kind of update and mention that in a future video. But for right now, I would imagine that it's basically for every 5,000 fame your character has, add one, starts at difficulty 1, and add one for every 5,000 points of fame that your character has. That would be what I would go with if I was to just arbitrarily make something up. Okay. But it is a presence roll. There's no skills attached to that. Straight presence. Bear that in mind. And then that would allow you to do some really cool scenes, like Ivanhoe becoming Sir Desticato in order to fight in the tournament, so that his father won't recognize who he is, but he can also stand up for the Saxons and make the Templars kind of pay for their arrogance. The Normans and their Templar allies pay for their arrogance. That's kind of a cool thing you can throw in using that system. In fact, you could even, if you wanted to be a little more, in depth with this, you could actually have a character who has multiple personas. Like you've got Ivanhoe, and then you've got Sir Desticato. Let's say that Ivanhoe actually maintains the Sir Desticato disguise for longer than just the one tournament. Then kind of like, another one would be William Thatcher and Sir Ulrich von Liechtenstein from the Knight's Tale movie. If you wanted to have a character like that. Well, William Thatcher doesn't have a lot of fame. William Thatcher hasn't been knighted. William Thatcher is starting out with just bare minimum amounts of fame. But Sir Ulrich von Liechtenstein is going to have a very high fame. So Sir Ulrich is going to have huge amounts of fame towards the end of the story. William Thatcher won't, until it is somehow revealed to the people at large that William Thatcher is Sir Ulrich. And that's when you can have that whole big moment where the fame gets switched and then you have this big dramatic thing, and then William Thatcher becomes Sir William Thatcher. So maybe he lost a lot of fame because people realized that he was lying, and so there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not believing this person. So you impose a fame deficit when you do transfer the fame over. But then he gains the plus 300 fame for the fact that he was officially knighted. And then he can start to build that fame back up again, not from rock bottom, but from, like, let's say, mid-ground a little bit. And that's another way you can kind of use fame. You're not going to take the skill away from the character. You're not, like, if they gain skills with their high fame, I wouldn't take those away from them. But the influence that they would have would be gone. The crowd, people might gather to see them, but not for the right reasons, or not for the reasons that they would like, I should say. But now they can start building up that fame again in a different direction under a different name. That's another way you can kind of do that thing. Someone who has multiple personas in different cities, like there's a character from a series that is written by the author David Eddings. The character is known as Silk, and he's a very much a kind of a thief / merchant / con artist, what have you. But he has like a different persona in almost every city. He's got different disguises that he takes on, and each one of them has a different life. And so each character would have a different fame track if you wanted to do it that way, and that they all feed into the one character sheet, but different fame levels, and you can make it as complicated as you want, or not. Or just tell your player characters, we're not messing with that. Everything goes off the same pool of fame. This is too much. Which is kind of how I would lean, especially for your first game. But it's a thought. It's an option. All right. So I think that's enough of me yammering on about fame and how it works. It's a tool. It's an interesting tool, and it's one of the things that I think makes the Prince Valiant storytelling game a little more unique compared to other game systems that focus more on experience points and what those mean. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something that you found interesting. If you did, please like the video and maybe leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you like more stuff like this. I'm going to keep covering little pieces of the Prince Valiant system for a little while now because it's my current obsession. It may change in the future without warning, but for right now, I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to try to talk about different segments of it, maybe go into a little more depth about each segment of the rules instead of trying to do a broad brushstrokes overview and fit it all into one video. I'll try to take it section by section moving forward, and I still am also looking forward, once I've got all the rules covered, I want to start covering some of the scenarios and how they can be applied, but also how they can be applied not only to the Prince Valiant system, but also to other role-playing systems as well, because there's some great adventure ideas that are tucked away in both this book, the main book, and the episode book. So please, if that sounds interesting to you, I would appreciate the subscribe, and we will catch you on the flip side. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and peace be with you. Bye-bye.